When we don't have focus in our mind and when we don't have focus in our energy, we are often directing ourselves toward wrong activity because we are trying to get as much done as possible in a frenetic state that burns out our focus and our energy. In order to make sure that we are staying the course of keeping our minds in the right place, what I always tell people is your systems have to create the automaticity that preserves your energy and mitigates risk. Okay. Risk is another component of it because lawyers tend to be worriers. Our mind goes into 1,000 different directions of all the crap that could go wrong because good lawyers, we solve problems for a living. So as soon as problems are presented, the first thing we do is go into problem solving mode. And that's a good thing for keeping us out of malpractice, away from grievances, right? We want not to have those problems. But if you're focusing on having those problems and avoiding those problems, you're overly concerned with risk mitigation as opposed to having it baked into the system of your business. So you want to get to the point where you're there. And that's always something that you should be focusing on. So the question then becomes, how do I actually create a systematized law firm? How do I get to that point of automaticity where everybody's doing what needs to be done on a loop instead of having to think about it? Well, the first thing you have to do is release the idea that you have to be the one who builds the system for everything in your business. Now, this is scary for a lot of us control freaks, right? We are the smartest people in the building. We know everything. We know as much as anybody else, and we think that we ought to be the ones building it because at the end of the day, our name's on the door. And the problem with that thinking is that you went to law school presumably to be a lawyer. You are not the best secretary, not the best paralegal, not the best file clerk, not the best marketer, not the best rainmaker, not the best website builder. If you don't let the people who are doing the work first to identify what they're doing, and second, improve what they're doing, and you jump yourself into a business that's not your business. It's your ownership of business, but it's not your business in the sense that that's what you're doing. You are ill-suited to the problem. So what tends to happen is lawyers decide they're going to fix something that somebody else has already done, and then they go on and do it their own way because they know that they're better suited to do it than you are. There are a whole bunch of businesses where the staff is doing things without your knowledge or consent. And not because they are being flagrantly disrespectful, but because they recognize that they have an expertise in something that you are not recognizing. So we, of course, don't want to encourage our staff to disregard our instructions. And I'm not authorizing that or suggesting that that ought to be what you're authorizing. But you do have to recognize that when a person owns the job, meaning when they take responsibility for the job, when they see it as something that they participated in, when they created it, they're going to have more loyalty to it, more allegiance to it, and they're probably going to have more of a territorial sense that it be done the right way because they participated in defining what right is. So once you get out of the idea that you have to be involved, the next thing you have to consider is involving the team is a process. So that means we're going to look at the state of art. Okay, everyone loves a good acronym. They were my favorite. ART means you're going to ask, record, and transcribe. Okay, so easy system for creating a system in a law firm. Do not take time out of the day and create lunch meetings where you're going to laboriously go through all of the details of how we open the mail or how we get the paralegals onboarded or whatever the system is that you're creating. The easiest way to start the process of systematizing is ask, record, and transcribe. So first, ask your team what they are doing. Anyone who's been in your office for any length of time ought to be able to regurgitate to you with relative ease what they do when something needs to get done in a particular job. So let's say it's a paralegal. It's time to draft a motion. Ask your paralegal what it is that they are doing from soup to nuts, beginning to end, to draft the motion. They ought to be able to tell you that. Now, they might leave some things out, but the starting point is to get them just to get it out of their head and into some type of recordable format. When you have asked them, follow up with any questions about things that might be omitted. So if you know that there's a proof of mailing that goes with a motion and they didn't include that, don't criticize, just simply say, is there anything else that's included? Or don't we also include a notice of a proof of mailing? They ought to be able to tell you that with relative ease. Once it has been asked, again, you're going to record. So how do you record it? Well, the first thing I highly recommend is because we are busy, we want to make as many shortcuts as possible, get a recorder, a physical device where you can just press play, and press record and get the information recorded. You don't want to have the obligation of being a scrivener to write down what someone says because one, you're probably not going to get down all the words. Two, they're probably going to feel a little bit of resistance when you start to see that they're being documented, right? There's a feeling that we get when we know that someone's taking notes of what we're saying, because people oftentimes have a fear about being judged. So you don't want to create it into a process whereby people are going to be resistant to give you the information. You want them to just speak to you, and you want to be recording it. Now that you have your recording, you want to get that recording transcribed. And nowadays, there are a lot of very quick, very efficient, artificial intelligence, inexpensive, damn near cheap. I say inexpensive, that's my preferred word, but damn near cheap options for you to get that done. So the service that I use is called Sonix.ai. That is SONIX.ai. Sonix, for I believe it is $15 a month, you can join the platform, and you can get up to an hour of recording transcribed for $6. So you're not going to beat that pricing. It's very quick and easy. And once you send your device, your recording to Sonix, you get it back in about 10 minutes. And for the most part, I would say it's about 90 to 95% accurate when you get back from them. So when you have that recorded, transcribed documentation of your starting point, this is a great way for that person who you just asked to do the ask, record, transcribe process with you to take that transcription and now go make it better. Meaning they've now regurgitated to you what it is that they do, and you want to ask them, okay, now that we know what you do, how do we make this better? Okay, so it might be that they are putting documents in sequence on a board or on a desk to assemble them. Is there some way that we can do this faster? Is there technology that we could use, such as having everything scanned through PDFs and simply assemble it by virtue of moving things together on the computer, so that when it's printed in the form that would then be assembled? Just by asking questions like that, you can get to saving time. And so I know that some law offices are a little bit more traditional, or in the old school, as we might say. They're printing documents and then sticking them together and sticking tabs in between. That can take up to 2 or 3 hours, relative to assembling documents electronically. That can take 15 to 20 minutes. And then you have your service requirements. So how are we going to systematize that in a way that's going to give us some efficiency? Well, maybe you have multiple people involved in that. Maybe you have the paralegal who's going to print the document out, and the secretary who's going to package it, and then you have the file clerk or the legal assistant who's going to stick a label on it. What if you had one printing happen by the legal assistant, so you are saving paralegal time? They can be overbilling someone else for some qualitative work, and the legal assistant is then engaged in that process. You don't get to the point of asking these questions until you have in front of you what it is that's being done. Because again, you don't always know what's being done, and oftentimes you think you know what's being done. They're doing it their own way because you're not looking. So it's important to get it out on paper. Now, once you have it down on paper, and once you've decided how you're going to improve it, or rather someone who's involved in the task daily is deciding how it can be improved, and ultimately you as the owner or the office manager, somebody is signing off on that has some authority in the office, then you want to solidify your system, which means periodically you want to test it. Now, this is the part that most lawyers neglect, because we're all busy and we want to focus on solving problems, right? If it's working, why do I need to bother revisiting it again? Why is it a problem? And what I would suggest to you is that your systems are not necessarily problematic until they get tested, which means typically when you have a type of growth, usually 25 to 30% or more in growth is going to cause friction in a system, because more people are going to be working with it. You're going to have more hands on deck. So you want to be thinking about when is the right time to test the system, but periodically just take a look at it. See if people are doing things the right way. The easiest way to do that is to call somebody in your office and say, hey, tell me how it is that we do activity X, whatever it is. They ought to be able to tell you what the system is, and they ought to be able to tell you in relative consistency with what the written documented system is. This does not require that people have to go back and read the office manual. Okay, so for those of you that like to have these really pretty, systematized, glorious little books that you hand out on the first day of someone's job and you think anybody gives a shit, you are wrong. Nobody reads the office manual. But you need to have your system documented so that you can, one, train people when they come into the office, and two, you can get more efficiency out of the people who are there. So you need to have it created, but you don't need to have it created and use it as the Bible of your office, or in today's politically correct terms, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, or whatever holy book you use. You don't want it to be the book of the office, right? You want it to just be a useful resource that people can refer back to. So once you have the book created and once you have your systems and you've been checking and testing your systems, the one thing that you always want to be focusing on is improving in the areas of marketing, sales, people, and systems. Okay, those are the 4 key areas because marketing and sales is always going to impact your money. So you're going to have a lot of problems in business, but the one problem you cannot solve is going out of business. Okay, once you go out of business, you have a whole new business. So to keep yourself from going out of business, you have to always be looking at the bottom line and always be thinking about how can we get more with less time, energy, and labor cost. Labor cost is the highest cost in a professional services firm. Unless you have situated yourself in a grossly overpriced office, you are probably going to spend more on people, sustaining those people, compensating those people, benefiting those people than anything else in your business. So you want to make sure that you are getting a multiple on the time that people are putting into your business. I recommend no less than 3 to 5 times a multiple of what you are paying somebody should be coming into the office in economic value. So you want to be thinking about how can we get more value for less time. And a lot of times that becomes self-evident when you are actually looking at and testing your systems. Now, the final piece, and I will speak to this briefly because I know we have a time restriction, is troubleshooting. So sometimes we create a system, we think it's perfect, it's been tested, tried, trained, everybody knows it, but it's not working for us anymore. So somebody does something that screws up and you think, hey, don't we have our system? What the heck is wrong? We created this system, why is someone not following it? And rather than get mad, and I'm not telling you should never get mad about deviations from your system, but anger is not usually going to be the first place that you go to solve a problem. It's a natural reaction, but it's not the place that you're going to solve your problem. So you have to ask the question, does the person actually know the system? Especially in growing firms, when you add new people, we oftentimes assume that the person who's responsible for training took the thorough time and energy and investment that we would expect them to train up our people. Oftentimes, not the case. You also want to ask that if the person does know the system and they deviated from the system, why did they deviate? So sometimes people are taught a system, but they are not taught that it is the absolute and only way to do something. They are taught best practices. So they believe I should be doing it a certain way, except when there's a state of exigency. So there are certain priorities that we have to know, right? You may say our highest priority is taking care of our client. So if a client comes in, you drop everything, you take care of a client. Other people may say, other partners in the firm, other lawyers that are supervising that employee, or other employees who have worked there for a long time may say, what's most important in this firm is getting our paperwork meticulous. So under no circumstance should you allow a person who's come in to interrupt the flow of that. You should let them know, acknowledge them, that they will be served momentarily and you continue doing what you're doing. Different firms have different philosophies on that. Whatever your philosophy is has to be baked into your system so that whoever is trained on your system knows if there's any reason why you have to step away from the system, these are the circumstances when you can deviate, and these are the circumstances when you cannot. And sometimes the answer is you can never deviate. But whatever your rule, you have to make sure that people know your rule before you criticize them or punish them as a result of deviating. The final thing I want to note on this is when people deviate from systems, it is not usually that they just don't care what their boss told them to do or that they're not trying to comply. Now, there are some people that honestly don't care. They're going to do it their own way no matter what. But we want to avoid those people. And the best way to avoid those people is to have an assessment of every person that works in your office. I'm a big proponent of assessments. The one that I personally use is the Real Talent Hiring Assessment. It's owned by a guy named Jay Henderson. And you can find it at realtalenthiring.com. FYI, I don't get any type of premium or any type of affiliate fee for sharing that with you. But I believe in this particular protocol because it tells you a lot of information about how people function at the level of maintaining systems, managing themselves, and managing others. So if you see that a person does not respect systems, that does not mean they are a never hire, but they have to have a certain level of oversight that others might not have. All right, that's what I got for you today on 3Xing your efficiency by transitioning from a people-dependent to a systems-dependent law firm.
That was amazing. I feel like it was a fire hose, but it was a very targeted fire hose of information that came out with a very clear to-do list. Okay, so 3 steps: art, test, troubleshoot. I'm thinking, okay, art is ask, record, transcribe. So because that just alleviated so much of my anxiety, because as the leader of a company, you think I have to go build these systems out. And whenever the word systems makes it to a to-do list, it causes the owner, or someone on the leadership team just tremendous anxiety, because it's so vague, and it's like, I haven't been doing X in the law firm for however long, because I'm focused on XYZ responsibility. So what you're saying is, just instead of getting stressed out about systems, just as soon as you said the word ask, my anxiety levels went like from here to like here. I was just like, oh crap, I can just ask people what is the system, record it, transcribe it, right? That's art. Ask, record, transcribe, then test it and troubleshoot it. And then there you go. You have a system. And then over time, instead of going back into your mad scientist layer and thinking, or my system, do I need to change my system? No. You pick up the phone and you ask again, what are you doing in X part of the law firm? So I think you did a spectacular job taking systems into a simple step-by-step process. I'm shocked. So I'm speechless.